And it does sound like we do have Manish Mehta, New York Jets writer, on the line with us. Manish, how are you this morning? And thank you for joining us.
How you doing, guys? Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
So the other night, big Snoopy Bowl. You have the New York Jets, New York Giants. We hit on the Giants side a little bit earlier. Just give me your thoughts from a Jets side. I know you were very happy with what you saw out of Sam Darnold, but a little disappointed. Not one pass breakup from the Jets defense in 37 attempts.
Yeah, that's, I think, going to be their bugaboo. The cornerback room is a little bit shaky, even if you look at the starters. Trumaine Johnson, obviously, coming off a disappointing season last year. Brian Poole, who they signed to replace Buster Skrine in the slot. We'll see what he can do, in the middle of the field. And then Darryl Roberts, who overachieved last year on the opposite side of Trumaine Johnson. And there's not much depth to speak of beyond what I think is a shaky starting group. So, I know that Greg Williams likes to dial up a lot of exotic blitzes, really likes to bring a lot of defensive backs, actually, when blitzing. But if they can't get home, if they can't get to the quarterback, I think you could see this secondary give up a lot of chunk plays. And, we saw a glimpse of that in this first preseason game.
What are you expecting from the Jets this year under Adam Gase, a new head coach and Darnold's second year, so it's the second time dealing with a new coach? What are you expecting from Adam Gase and his schemes and what he's bringing to the Jets?
Well, it's interesting because he's not necessarily fantasy friendly, so I know that fantasy owners aren't going to particularly be pleased with what they get week in and week out from whoever they have on their team, because he does like to spread the ball around. He'll have two running backs. It's not going to be a running back by committee. Obviously, LeVeon Bell will be, first and foremost on the pecking order. But Ty Montgomery is going to get a lot of playing time. He's going to get a fair amount of touches. And in terms of wide receivers, Quincy Enunwa, Robbie Anderson, Jamison Crowder, I think it's going to be a spread the wealth type of philosophy, type of scheme, and especially in those first 4 weeks when Chris Herndon's going to be out due to suspension. I don't necessarily know if you're going to get a target hog. In fact, I think if you're looking at any one of those guys, you should probably be looking at Jamison Crowder. So he might be the high volume guy, but ultimately, what does that mean? Does that mean 5 or 6 catches for 60 yards? Perhaps. I just don't think there's a true, fantasy star in this offense. And in many ways, I'm also including Le'Veon Bell. I think Bell can be a really productive player in real life. But, if you're expecting the Le'Veon Bell from his days in Pittsburgh, I think you're going to be disappointed just from a statistical standpoint.
And that's what I want to talk to you about. Le'Veon Bell and his running style in Pittsburgh. He's somebody that once he gets the ball, the handoff, he shows such great patience, kind of waits for the hole to develop. I know the Jets have done some nice work on the offensive line. I think they've made some great moves. But is this an offensive line that can do the same thing for Le'Veon Bell that he got in Pittsburgh?
Yeah, that's the great mystery, right? And I actually think that the strength for this offensive line will be pass protection. And the combination of, decent pass protection and Sam Darnold's mobility, I think, will ultimately make this a pass-first team. And I guess I buried the lead. Adam Gase's preference is to throw the football. So I think all of those combinations, all of those factors will ultimately lead this team to be heavy on the pass. I don't necessarily think that this is an offensive line that's going to open a huge holes consistency for Le'Veon Bell. You touched on the patience. He's got that trademark style, which takes time. It'll take some time to develop that chemistry and rapport with the offensive line. I don't know if it's ultimately ever going to get to what he had with those guys up front in Pittsburgh. But I think, if you're just looking at this line and breaking it up in terms of run blocking and pass protection, I think they're better suited to protect the passer, and that's why I don't think you're going to see Le'Veon Bell averaging 4.5 yards a carry or anything like that. It's not slight on Le'Veon's talent and ability. I just think that when you look at the pieces up front, even including Ryan Khalil, who they signed to be their center, and the trade that they made this offseason, which I thought was terrific, getting Kelechi Osemele, I just think that this is a line that's ultimately going to be better suited for protecting Sam Darnold instead of opening holes consistently for the running backs.
And Ryan Khalil is who I wanted to ask you about next. That came out of nowhere. The guy, he briefly retired and he comes back quickly, and it didn't even seem like he made himself available for any teams to go in there. It's kind of like only the Jets knew about it. Very under the radar. Could be a good signing, multi-time Pro Bowler over there. How big of an impact is he going to have in this offense?
Well, I think he's going to be extremely helpful for Sam Darnold. If you rewind 10 years when Mark Sanchez came into the league, Nick Mangold was extremely beneficial for him, setting protections, helping him see things at the line of scrimmage. I think that will be Ryan Khalil's most valuable asset to this offense. Now physically, how good is he? He did play 16 games last year. I know he was banged up, but he played through that. He fought through that. The previous 2 years he was hurt, and I don't think you can discount that when you look at his age and where he is at his career right now. So I think it was an upgrade from Jonathan Harrison. I don't think there's any doubt in that, because even if Khalil can't do what he could have done, 3, 4 years, 5 years ago, as that perennial Pro Bowler, just the institutional knowledge that he has, the football IQ that he has, will serve Darnold well. So again, can he stay healthy for 16 games again? That remains to be seen. But it was a nice stealth move by Joe Douglas. And, as you said, it almost appeared like nobody else was involved, and I think that's the way the Jets liked it.
And we're speaking to New York Jets reporter Manish Mehta, the great Manish Mehta. You wrote a piece, very interesting, about Trevor Siemian and how his role has come in, and he wants to be the best that he can be for Sam Darnold. Where do you see Trevor Siemian, though, long term? Do you see him as a starter in the National Football League, or after seeing him in camp? And the article you wrote, he's clearly somebody who still thinks he can start. Do you see him as a starter long term in the NFL?
It all depends on what's available, what opportunities will be available in 2020, what teams will be looking for a quarterback, what teams will be looking for a bridge starter for a young quarterback. Obviously, there's going to be some quarterbacks that are going to be drafted. Is Trevor Siemian a guy who could be a bridge quarterback in Miami, for example, or maybe Tampa, if Tampa parts ways and, doesn't sign Jameson Winston for, to a long-term deal. I don't know how many jobs will be available. But just from an IQ perspective and a guy who's had prior experience, let's not forget, he was the starter for Denver for the better part of 2 seasons. And, he flashed at times. He's still relatively young. He'll be 28 at the end of this season. And he is learning a new system. I know that the Rams were interested in him being Jared Goff's backup for a bit before they got Blake Bortles. The Bengals were also interested. Who knows what Cincinnati's situation is going to be in 2020 as well. So it's an interesting situation because he has had a taste of being a starter for multiple years, and he's not this 19, 18-year veteran like Josh McCown was, where he's content, for lack of a better word, of being a backup. It's funny because I asked him the other day, if I said to you, well, the Jets are in a really good position because they have one of the better backups in the NFL, how would you take that? Because it's almost like a double-edged sword, like a backhanded compliment in many ways. And he said that, look, that would make him, the 35th best or 40th best quarterback in the NFL? That's not something that he's striving for. But, this preseason is immensely important for him. If he can show that he's got, quality skills to compete for a starting job, even if it's a bridge starting job, in 2020, I think he'd be happy with it.
From following you on Twitter, I know you love your Jets and you're the biggest Sam Darnold fan out there. You probably have the Jets going 16-0 and Sam Darnold the MVP. But reality, what is your expectation for the Jets this year? The Vegas team win total is set at 7.5. What are you expecting? How many wins? Did they make the playoffs? What are you thinking you're going to see from the Jets this year?
Well, first and foremost, I do believe that Sam Darnold is going to make a significant jump in his second season. We've seen it in recent years with Jared Goff and Carson Wentz, Mitchell Trubisky. Patrick Mahomes is kind of an outlier because he didn't really play as a rookie. But you've seen these young quarterbacks make that leap from year 1 to year 2, and even when you're changing systems. Trubisky was changing systems, Jared Goff as well. So I do think that Darnold is going to be vastly improved. I'm realistic. I don't think that this team is going to win the division. I think they'll be playing relevant games in December. I think they'll be in the playoff hunt. That 7.5 over/under is a great number. I think, I want to see how the preseason unfolds in terms of injuries and how they are health-wise entering the season. But I'm leaning toward this being a 9-7 team because, in my estimation, given the additions that they made in the offseason, given the fact that they got an offensive-minded coach, and given the fact that Darnold has a year of experience under his belt, it would be a disappointment, in my opinion, if this team was a 500 team or worse. So 8-8 in my mind, even though they only won 4 games last year, that to me is not good enough. I think they need to be above 500. Whether that means that they'll ultimately make the playoffs or not, who knows? But if they don't settle in at around 9 wins, I don't think that this season, frankly, would have been a success.
And it looks like Tom Brady is not going anywhere anytime soon. He has signed on for another 2 years after this season. What does this mean in the developmental of the Jets, and is this going to set them back? Or do you think the Jets can actually surpass the Patriots? Because it doesn't seem like age is stopping Tom Brady in the Pats.
Well, I want to see Brady get through the season. I mean, I guess anybody can say that, and in many ways, I kind of have said it over the last several years. Seeing is believing with Brady, which is an odd thing to say because he's the best quarterback I've ever seen in my life. But the fact that he's 42 years old, it has to end at some point, right? I know that Patriots fans don't want it to end, and they don't believe it's going to ever end. But reality tells you that it is going to end at some point. So I'll be interested to see if he can get through a 16-game season. I don't believe it. I hope he does. I don't want to wish injury on any player. But I think that the Jets see this window as an opportunity, and I know the Bills do as well, as an opportunity to, finally take control of the AFC East, at some point, maybe not in 2019 per se, but there's a window here where Tom Brady is in the twilight of his career. He might not be around for more than 1 year, 2 years, whatever it may be. So I do think this is a good time, to be honest with you, to be a Jets fan, to be a Buffalo Bills fan. We'll see what the Dolphins do in terms of getting a quarterback in the draft next year. But I do believe that the Bills and the Jets are positioning themselves in a very smart way to be a very competitive team and perhaps be the team to beat in the AFC over the next several years.
And before we let you go, Manish, just talk about Quinnen Williams, because this is somebody, but I'm not even talking football talent. His personality is off the charts. He is quickly becoming a fan favorite here in New York.
Yeah, he's a big kid, right? I mean, he's such a young guy, and he's a willing learner. I think a lot of guys who have been taken with the 3rd pick overall, this is a player who was viewed as the number 1 pick on many teams' boards. A lot of guys would come in with a different type of attitude. He, to me, has the attitude of an undrafted rookie. To be honest with you, he's a sponge in terms of listening and learning from veterans. There's been guys who have taken him under his wing. He has no ego, but at the same time, he does not lack in confidence. I mean, he believes he will be a dominant player at some point. I share that belief. I don't think he's going to be a dominant player off the bat. I think he can be a valuable contributor this season, and certainly this defensive line has a lot of depth, and his presence alone will have a ripple effect, and I think it'll benefit a guy like Leonard Williams so much, having a player of Quinnen Williams' ability in that defensive line rotation. So it's hard not to like the kid because, again, he is a kid in many respects. He's doing things the right way, not cutting corners, and he's got a lot of self-confidence, and those are types of players that I enjoy being around.
And we had you on last year, and we're Giant fans here, and you were very emphatic that the Giants made a big mistake passing on Sam Darnold for Saquon Barkley. We all know you're the biggest Darnold fan out there. But now we have Daniel Jones, and he looked pretty good against the Jets. It was a second unit, 5 for 5. What did you think about Daniel Jones against the Jets?
I was impressed. I was, and you don't want to make too much out of a rookie's first performance against a defense. It was a mix of starters and backups. It was all backups in the secondary. They had their starting
Giants Ring of Honor, Manish. He's ready.
Yeah, well, I don't know about that, but he looked comfortable. I would like to see him actually. I'd like to see him play a series with Saquon Barkley and Evan Ingram. Both of those guys weren't even in there. So, and those are his 2 biggest weapons. And one of those weapons might be the biggest weapon in the NFL. So, it was a good start for him. It's interesting because I think if you polled most Giant fans, they probably didn't like the Daniel Jones pick, and then if you asked them how many snaps they watched of Daniel Jones at Duke, they probably would have said none. So give the kid a little bit of time. I don't think there's any rush to start him week 1. I don't think, as I'm sure you guys believe as well, I don't think the Giants are a playoff team. So get him in at some point, whether that's September, probably not, but maybe October, as early as October, and give him an opportunity that Eli Manning got as a rookie. Get his feet wet. Eli was terrible, as you guys know, that rookie year, and he was actually really good in his first full season as the starter. So I think that should be the blueprint for the Giants. Give this kid an opportunity to play some games as a rookie and then hit the ground running in 2020 with him.
And that's it for us, Manish. Thank you for joining us. Really appreciate it. Some great stuff, some great Jets, in look there. Really appreciate it. And everybody can follow Manish on Twitter at MMEHTA_NYDN New York Daily News. So, Manish, thanks for joining us this Saturday, and hopefully we talk to you again during the season.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Manish. Manish Mehta at the Daily News over there. Always fun to talk with him. He's a very fanish reporter, but he's still very, very knowledgeal.
He gives it to you straight, though.
It's always great hearing from him.
He has no issue telling you how he feels about anything with the Jets. He doesn't like the secondary at all.
Yeah.
He thinks it's going to be underwhelming. So Manish Mehta giving us some time here on Saturday morning.